Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Multiverse 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Got Harem with Kushina Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please give me hype instead of comment and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. She was being trained as a ninja. She shouldn't cry. She should see this as a mission, a great opportunity to see not only her mother's family, but a great opportunity to prove herself, like her older sister Kasumi, who was already going through the training. But it still hurt. She didn't want to leave her mother and father, and especially her baby brother. She was only 6, and they were sending her to the home of her clan, the Uzumaki, in Whirlpool. She didn't know her grandparents, and she didn't think Kasumi would spend much time with her, already a ninja of the Whirlpool. She was going to be alone with strangers. She sat gazing at the moon through her bedroom window, hands cupping her face as she sighed, long red hair down for the night. She never heard the quiet entrance or the figure that crept up on her. But she wasn't surprised at the strong comforting arms that encircled her and picked her up. She leaned back, knowing her father would hold her. A gentle, rumble voice was heard in the night. "My Haim, you are not happy. You have wanted to train as a ninja for so long." She turned her gaze to see her most favorite person, her father, and the daimyo of the Land of Fire. He was tall and elegant, with a lean frame and manly aristocratic face. He had black hair to his shoulders, and deep green eyes, which she got from him. "I want to go, Otou-san, but I don't want to leave home." She heard him chuckle as he sat down, facing the open window that showed the beautiful full moon. "All children must leave at some time. How else do they grow up? And your grandparents, the daimyo of Land of Whirlpool and her decorated husband, would love to see another of their Uzumaki daughters. When they learned of your bloodline awakening so soon, they were so proud of you. And with your silliness," she stuck her tongue out at him, which he only laughed at quietly, "they were most happy to have you stay with them. But why can't I be a Konoha ninja?" His eyebrow quirked. "You don't wish to honor your family." She squirmed at those words, a small pout on her face. "I do, but I want to go to Konoha, and be one of them. That way, I can be closer. And I can learn their really cool jutsu." She smiled broadly, eyes crinkling at the thought. The daimyo, Daiki, merely shook his head with a small smile. "Your mother would not be pleased to know of such." Her beautiful smile crumbled, and she spoke. "Okawa-san is never happy with me. It wouldn't be any different." Her father scowled, not knowing what to say. He knew very well his loving wife's constant anger at their youngest and wildest daughter. Of what he could understand, it was because the two were so much alike, whether either wanted to admit it. Stubborn, with a streak of brashness, though his wife had tamed down in the past few years of their marriage, and the constant desire for adventure. A true Uzumaki, he understood. Silent, he merely hugged his daughter tighter, and whispered, "You two are so much alike, but neither of you will ever understand." His wild daughter's face scrunched up, disbelieving. "Then why is she always mad at me, even when I haven't done anything?" He sighed. "Because you two are so much alike, you drive each other crazy. Just know, Haim, that she loves you with all her heart nonetheless. No matter what you say or do, your mother loves you." He knew that his daughter would brush it off, but he had wanted to say it. Looking at the moon, he sighed again, almost reluctant to let his baby girl go. But it was for the better. He knew in his heart that despite her royal status, she was made for better things. She was made for the world, where excitement and adventure coursed through her veins. He saw after a while that the girl had nodded off, her long beautiful red hair glistening in the moonlight, pale skin soaking in the rays of the night. She and her sister were truly going to be the most beautiful women in the world, but both would naturally hide it. He cared not, for it meant less boys knocking on his door. Standing up, he carried his daughter to bed, and kissed her forehead, smoothing her hair down before he stood up, gazing at his daughter one last time, knowing tomorrow everything would change. "Sleep well, Kushina Haim." The horizon has just started to lighten for you, and the path is long and treacherous. But you will make a name for yourself. This I know. He left the room, most certain to close the door quietly behind him. Kushina-chan, you must raise your head higher. There, much better. Now, remember to smile as you pour drinks, while keeping an eye on both your guest and the drink. The 7-year-old was grinding her teeth at this, but complied to her grandmother's orders. She could see in the corner of her eye her grandfather, uncles, and male cousins laughing quietly at her predicament. They knew she loathed this part of her training. If you could call it that. She wanted to be a kunoichi, yes. But this was ridiculous. Kunoichi were fighters just as much as men were. So why in the hell did they only have a woman doing such stupid things? But of course, she already knew the answer. She calmed herself down, finishing the last of her grandmother's and aunt's lesson of serving guests and table manners, along with her female cousins. It was still odd to play girl with anyone. As a Haim, she had no such duties, except to behave properly at functions. But now she had to learn all types of styles for women of different stations, language, acting, composure, and other silly things. But she memorized it nonetheless. The second the 7 girls were dismissed, she quickly excused herself from the table, and left the room. Then she ran for the hills, or her bedroom, to be truthful. Quickly, without the help of the awaiting maid, she stripped out of her exquisite and no doubt expensive attire, and changed into her more comfortable training clothes. It was a black chain-mail jacket with thousands of pockets on the inside, and orange long sleeves with a blue swirl and wooden toggles on her left arm, the family insignia of the right turning swirl in orange on her back. The Uzumaki was the founding clan of Whirlpool, and to honor them, the family crest was made as the village's symbol. The collar was fur-lined. Her pants were black with orange stripes on the sides that went to her shins, and black ninja shoes. Her hair was taken out of its fancy do, and put into a messy bun, with the strands at the sides. Leaving her room, she saw her grandfather and the other men were already at the training area designated for the family, and she quickly joined them in taijutsu practice, and none of them mentioned the earlier lesson. Okay, one of her cousins mentioned it, just as they were about to spar together. He was teasing her again. She tried so hard to not do anything. But you know, it never is wise to anger an Uzumaki woman. And her cousin learned that the second they were told to fight. Her adrenaline was pumped with anger, and she surprised them all with her speed, and they all saw her eyes spinning in the family dujutsu. Fearful, beautiful eyes. The last thing her cousin remembered before being knocked out for a day was her angry face, and her fist pulled back before delivering the nose-crushing blow. Calmed down, she was swept up into a hug by her grandfather, who could only laugh at his most spirited grandchild. She was a true Uzumaki. He spoke, finger tapping her nose. Kushina Haim, you are an unpredictable ball of trouble. And I would have you no other way. Kushina Haim, you are 9. Act your age, instead of a 3-year-old. Yelled her tutor Hotaka, a lean tall man with reddish-brown hair, Junin outfit on, his hiteki proudly placed on his forehead to show the swirl of whirlpool, exactly like her family symbol. She sighed, wanting so badly to retort back that civilian 9-year-olds acted the same way, but she cut herself off knowing full well she would lose the long argument. Civilians were just that, civilians. They were not raised as ninja, who act twice their age, and had no ninja-bred traits. And she was one of the heirs of the Uzumaki, the noblest clan in Whirlpool country and highest breeding. A bunch of blah if you asked her. Hi, Hotaka-sensei. Though inside, she was laughing her head off. She had just pranked a couple Junin that were being rather perverted, and she felt they deserved what they got for peeking into the hot springs. In fact, they got off lightly. She had put them under a genjutsu with her dujutsu, Kamigan, God's Eye. Nothing harmful, to be honest, as it was a benign genjutsu to make the victim dream of happy thoughts. It was mainly used on trauma patients or those with mental problems. But she had tweaked it a little to make them dream of what they were currently looking at, but on a much larger scale. Men can't handle anything, and don't think at all with their heads unless a fight happens. She scoffed. It was disgusting what proceeded, but when they were caught, the women from the hot spring beat the shit out of them. It was a most impressive display, she had to say. Hotaka rubbed the bridge of his nose, knowing full well she would not feel guilt on this. Kushina was a clever girl, very clever, especially with the use of her dujutsu. He had heard about other dujutsu users, here and in Konoha, who were treated like royalty for such bloodlines. Kushina, despite all the trouble she gave him, at least earned her skills through practice and hard work. And she was royalty. Come, we have another lesson to finish before the day is out. She smiled, jumping up from her seat, ready to learn whatever he threw at her. He smirked to himself. One thing he enjoyed about teaching the hyper-troublesome girl was the fact that if you wanted to teach her, she was eager to learn. Any attention you gave her was better than anything. The redhead was quickly beside him, following her sensei while bouncing in her shoes, her orange and black jacket hefty from all the weaponry she carried. What are you teaching me now, sensei? Oh come on, gimme a hint. Laughter could be heard from the Junin, as they left the clearing. She was 11, and announced as an official Whirlpool ninja, graduating a year early by special permission. She had nothing to learn there since she was 9, but they kept her in for 2 more years before they realized they were stunting her growth. But unlike the others, she wasn't placed on a team of genin, just like they did to her sister, who was now an Anbu. For her protection, they had said, a princess of the land of fire and whirlpool was better kept safe than in the hands of the enemy. Liars. They were outcasting her like always because she was an Uzumaki. Compared to all the others, she was an elite in several ways. She hated it. She didn't ask to come from such a great family. It just wasn't fair that they separated her from everyone. Unlike the other genins, she was placed on a team of Junin and Chunin, with Hotaka sensei of course team leader. The only good thing about being on such a team was that she was now put on higher missions, and would get more experience. Hotaka sensei explained that she would have more to go on, and learn so much more. He of course was trying to comfort her, but she was thankful for that at least. But it didn't stop the tears she shed, hiding in her favorite spot, the highest hill that was surrounded by the forest, a small but beautifully hidden clearing that showed all of her village. It wasn't long until she had company. Her grandfather had always been able to find her, along with Hotaka. No one else seemed able to. Then again, this spot was known only to the 3 of them. Her grandfather was a great man, one of her 3 favorite men. She loved her cousins and uncles, but they were not impressionable to her. The older man came to the clearing, and sat down beside his granddaughter, quiet like the ninja he was. She could smell from her heightened senses, sweet tobacco and mints and flowers from her grandmother's and aunt's gardens, and hear every breath he took and shift of his clothing. They sat in silence for a time, before his gravely gentle voice spoke. Haim, life will never be fair. But you are an Uzumaki, and you will move on, like the whirlpool. Every life has a different wave, and this is the one your path shall ride. You will stumble, as we all do. But you must always pick yourself, and continue on the path you choose to ride. It will be hard, and dangerous, but whatever choice you make, understand that your family will always love you, and we will support you in whatever you desire. She felt almost struck by this comment. Very few times in her life did someone even think to give her a serious lesson, let alone actually give her one. But her grandfather was right. She was an Uzumaki, and had no time to dwell in the pity and politics of this village. She was going to get stronger, and prove to them that she was worthy of all they had given her. She would protect them like they protect her. They were family. She swiftly took out her favorite tanto, a gift from her mother, and to the surprise of her grandfather, she cut deep into her right hand, the crimson blood oozing out of the deep wound. She turned to him, deep green eyes sharp and determined, that changed to the Kamagen's silver and gold pupil with 4 black triangles, and she swore, right hand clenched tight, the blood dropping to the forest floor. Then I swear I will ride the path of my life, with no regrets, no broken promises, and no bloodshed of those I protect that is not my blood first. Her grandfather was silent at first, before he stood, his dark green eyes also shifting to the Kamagen. He took the tanto from her hand, and cut into his own old right hand, and nodded his head at her. No regrets, and no broken promises. To protect our precious people to the bitter end. With that, they clasped bloody hands, letting their blood mix as determined and excited faces stared at each other. And then Kushina smiled, thinking of something rather funny. I think grandmother will be angry with us when she sees our hands. The old man gave a hearty laugh, grinning at his precious granddaughter. That she will be, Kushina Heim. Let's just call it a training accident. Kushina giggled, her long red hair falling out of its bun, and the wind played with the dazzling hair, face open to the world to show her slowly becoming a beautiful woman. She never saw the sad, bittersweet smile on her beloved grandfather's face. To the bitter end. XXXXXXXXXX. She had been an official ninja for only 3 months when she had been put on a B-ranked mission to escort a wealthy merchant. At first it was an easy-going stride, and she was slowly becoming acquainted with her high-ranking teammates, and trusting them to help her become a better ninja. Despite the time that had passed, the scar on her hand was still there from her sworn promise to her grandfather, and she knew it would stay with her for the rest of her life. She looked at it every night, as a reminder of what they had said that night. But this mission was different from the others. This time, she had to kill. It was on the 3rd day that it was becoming suspicious that there was no trace of possible ninja attackers. But as she had learned from the old saying of the elder Uzumaki, the calm of before the storm is what truly drives you mad. The others were just as restless as she was, but they controlled themselves better. It was to the point that Hotaka-sensei had her learning while on the trip. For a girl, she was quite a stamina and chakra freak, and needed to have something occupy her time. But it was because she was kept busy, that she didn't notice the wary looks on her teammates' faces, and only knew just as the attack happened what was going on. She was scared, and confused. What did they want her to do? Where was she to go first? Her first battle, and she was wasting the seconds by staring on. But then it clicked. It was ninja versus ninja. And her body went into action, instinct setting her in motion, Kamagen out for the fight. She took one of the ninja and started attacking, diverting him from the older Whirlpool ninja. Due to her surprise, she easily knocked him, a swift jab at pressure points. She congratulated herself, but in the corner of her eye, she saw something. Because of the Kamagen, she saw exactly what was about to happen. 25 feet away on the mini battlefield, an enemy ninja was about to strike down Hotaka-sensei from the back, as he was occupied by 2 others in front of him. Instinct and chakra got her there within a second, and she took the jab of the katana through her middle, and blood started spewing from her in seconds. But her adrenaline was so high that she barely felt it, ears pounding and all senses focused on her target, her beautiful terrifying eyes freezing the ninja on spot. He barely uttered the words, "and Uzumaki," before her special ice kunai swiped his throat, spraying onto her, but she didn't care. She turned to see Hotaka-sensei already finished, and he was staring at her like the others, amazed and pride in their eyes at their youngest teammate's first real accomplishment. Then it turned to worry as they all saw the sword still sticking through her, and it clicked in Hotaka's eyes when he saw their positioning. She had saved him, for the possible price of her life. But Kushina just smiled at him, knowing he was safe, a versus sign put up, as she fell, the adrenaline gone and the pain too much to bear that she slipped to unconsciousness. When she woke a few days later, it was to see her sensei and grandparents all taking watch on her. Apparently they had all nodded off, and all had dark circles under their eyes. Trying to sit up, she yelped in pain as her abdomen was put on fire. This made all 3 wake, and immediately came to her bedside, worry, pride, and happiness all etched on their faces. Her grandmother was holding her closely, careful of her granddaughter's stiff body, and cradled the girl's head near hers, hands running through the silky red tresses. Her grandfather sat beside her legs, a hand on her knee. And her sensei just smiled at her, pride beaming at his surrogate daughter. But Kushina's smile was bright, despite the pain, as she opened her palm to show all of them her bright red scar, and looked to her grandfather, and her voice, raspy from lack of use, spoke of her own pride. No regrets, no broken promise. He nodded at her, eyes softened, as he finished it, and protecting our precious people. Of course, this led to her grandmother asking what the hell the two crazies were talking about, and Hotaka laughed quietly to himself as he saw his student and the Uzumaki elder, both proud, stubborn, and strong people, cower before the old daimyo woman, and her evil eye. No, it wasn't happening. She had promised. She would never break this promise. Especially to her grandfather. But, he, the old bastard, had forced her to. They came out of nowhere. There was no sign of who was attacking, no hiteki or specialized weaponry. She had woken up when the sirens went off in her head, and she was dressed and ready within seconds. She joined her family and the other ninja as they tried to hold back whoever it was that was attacking, but there was so few whirlpool available, as most had gone to help out the war with Konoha against Kumo, her sister among them, and the rest on missions. Slowly, the tide of attacks took their toll on the ninja of Whirlpool, but at least most of the civilians got away unharmed. Now, it was time to get the royal family out. But the Uzumaki clan had nowhere to escape to. They were surrounded on all sides at the daimyo Uzumaki compound. Hotaka sensei was with them, and along with her grandfather, they sealed her into a safe room that would open at a time lock, in the hidden room behind her grandmother's throne. She had never screamed so hard in her life as she clawed and punched the door and walls, searching for some way to get out, to protect her family. But she was locked away with the family scrolls, treasures, and documents. And her grandfather's favorite shogi board. Why had they stuck her in here? It wasn't right. She was a kunoichi of Whirlpool, and was prepared to die like the rest of them. Why had they made sure that she was the only one kept safe? Even her cousins had helped make a path to protect her, getting in the line of fire. Why? She wasn't important. They could have sealed 20 others in here, there was enough stored food, water, and ventilation. But they left her alone in the dark room. While they died to conceal her presence. While they died as Whirlpool ninja, as she was hidden away like a fragile princess. For 3 days, she stayed inside the dark room, dying away slowly as she ate only a little, her body in shock, as her mind constantly went over what happened over and over. There was no reasonable explanation other than the wrath of her father, but that wasn't enough. She knew that it wasn't that. Her father had told her long ago that he was prepared for her and her sister's careers, and he meant everything that came with it. Why did they left her, as the last Uzumaki heir? Tears formed in her eyes, but she couldn't cry, not yet. There might be a chance. A slim chance. But it was a hope she was willing to hold onto. On the 4th day, she woke up to the seal being opened, the wall door cracking open, and she could start to hear noises and voices outside her little room. Getting up, despite her weak and tired body, she stood firmly, ready to attack any pilfers or thieves of her family's last treasures. Her eyes gave light to her vision, even in the dark room, and she prepared her kunai with wind and water element to sharpen the cuts. As the light finally showed the entire room, she saw many standing people in the throne room, and 2 that stood near the room's entrance that had undoubtedly opened the wall. With the burning fury that fueled her veins, she went on the attack, red hair flying behind her as she went to the one on her near right. She didn't care if she was outmatched. If these were the bastards that had attacked and planned to steal anything from her family, they were all going to die by her hand. She got in several good cuts on this very skilled ninja with black hair and weird red eyes, before she was roughly held by someone from behind, with long spiky white hair. She fought with all her strength, but it was giving way as she saw the bodies strewn about in the throne room. Blood was everywhere, with scattered weapons, kunai stuck in the walls. Then realization came to mind, as the scenario played out in her mind. There was no chance for any of them to have lived. They had all gone into the throne room to protect her grandfather and Hotaka as they sealed her away. They had no chance as they fought to make sure she lived. She wanted to hate them. She truly did. But she couldn't, as she stopped fighting, and stood there, the tears ready to fall. Her whole body had seemed to have gone numb, and her eyes returned to their green hue. She quietly stepped down the dais, and the bodies of two of her favorite men close to her hiding room. From the looks, they had died a hard fight. She didn't bother hiding from these strangers what she felt, as her hands shook touching her sensei's head and taking hold of her grandfather's withered and cold hand. As she gazed at the rest of them, she knew they all died hard. A whirlpool ninja's death. An Uzumaki's death. The tears now fell down her cheeks, and she didn't care if these strangers saw. How could she care? Her home was destroyed, and she was the last Uzumaki that held all of the secrets. The one with all of the last memories of her beloved and beautiful home. She was the one who had to remember. She spoke, remembering what her grandfather had said, her raspy voice heard by all in the vast throne room. No regrets, and no broken promises. To protect our precious people to the bitter end. That is what you taught me, Grandfather Uzumaki. But in the end, you denied me, and made me break my promise to you and our clan. Why, you old bastard? Why did you leave me alone? Why? She had screamed out the last question, letting out her frustration as she did so, head facing the ceiling as she cried out. No one made a move as the last Uzumaki let herself succumb to her sadness. She sat there, for nearly an hour, and none of them denied her that small chance to grieve for her clan. After a while, she calmed down. Standing on slightly wobbly legs, she went back to her prison for the past 4 days, and took an empty scroll, and began sealing everything into it. Then she went throughout the compound and took anything of value. Clothes, jewels, documents, scrolls, weapons, you name it, she sealed it. After she was done with that, she put it in her jacket, and groomed her hair into a messy bun, and washed her face off. She honestly didn't know what to do now. Go home to her parents was the only option she saw, as life as a homeless ninja was something she did not see as a calling. But that also meant giving up certain freedoms for her mother's respite. Giving up on herself was against her character. Her mother may not be happy with her, but Kushina could not destroy herself to make the woman happy. Her dilemma was solved for her, in the form of the white-haired ninja that had stopped her from killing the red-eyed guy. He crept up on her, although horribly in her opinion. He stood at a distance close for her to know he meant no harm, but at least 3 feet, lest she attack again. Though it was of no use. They weren't the attackers. You know, I believe Konoha wouldn't mind having a little trouble in the form of a pretty red head. Some Whirlpool ninja are still there, though most are planning to join Konoha now that Whirlpool has been debunked. If you want, I can take you there, and we can try to settle you. She was silent, then an idea came to mind. Can I join a genin team? An eyebrow rose. Weren't you on one? She shook her head. Here, they used to treat Uzumaki as royalty. It was stupid in my opinion, though, we are the daimyo's family. But it was still stupid. And because of that, I graduated ahead of time, and was put in a team of Junin and Chunin. So, I want to start like everyone else. At the bottom, and in Konoha, no one will know who I am, or steal my bloodline, as there are others of my blood, and none of them are known, so it is safe. No one knows me. No one will treat me like royalty. I'll have to earn it, just like an Uzumaki always does. He stared at her, face contorted in an odd mixture that couldn't be described. But he nodded. Well, Sandame should have no problem with that. You'll have to go to our academy for a couple months, as our next graduating class is then, and you'll be among those your age. It's below your talent, but it's something. She smiled softly at him, wind pulling on her hair, and he was awed at how beautiful this preteen looked, the storm above clouding the sky, the wind pulling on her softly, and he knew this is her element, her home. And Uzumaki was home in water and wind. But as she said goodbye with only a nod and a sad smile, he had to say, it was the greatest first impression he had of Uzumaki Kushina. Upon arrival to Konoha, she was almost swept away by its large size, and the gates of Konoha of course burned into her, a beautiful sight to attest to Konoha's strength. She had no time to sightsee, as she was shunshined to the Hokage's office by the white-haired man, Jiraiya. He introduced himself to the Hokage, and now that Kushina was in a place that she knew was safe, she introduced her full name to him. Uzumaki Kushina, Princess of the Land of Fire and Whirlpool, or the once Whirlpool. The last heir of the bloodline and last bearer of the family secrets. And last living soul to see Whirlpool. My brothers will never be ninja or heirs, so they cannot take the secrets. And my elder sister, I know not if she lives. Her little speech shocked both men, and later she learned the Anbu as well, and then she quickly lost her temper at their lack of speech. Oh come on. It's not that hard to just deal with it. I'm not asking you to call me Kushina Haim. Hell, if you do, I'll kick your until I get my point across. I'm an Uzumaki before I'm a princess, and whether you like it or not, you're stuck with me. This woke the ninja from their stupor, and Sandaime chuckled, having long heard of the traits of the Uzumaki, and the fiery temper was one of them. This would really be interesting to have her here. But, what about your parents? They must be worried. She was silent for a few minutes, before she looked him in the eye again. You can send word that I live in Konoha, that I am safe, and starting anew here. My father will accept this. Whatever my mother says, don't bother remembering. And if my father wishes to see me, tell him I will do so when I can, if you permit me, or if he wishes to come here. Sandaime nodded, but he along with Jiraiya stored the little information about her mother for later prodding. Alright then, we can do that. And as for living arrangements, we can easily get you an apartment, but for the next few days, you will be living with Joria. And as for money, I'll arrange for a stipend for you, so you have no need to go into your family accounts just yet. You will be starting the academy in 3 days. She nodded, and after a little more, she left with Jiraiya as her escort, finally moving her hiteki from her forehead and tying it around her neck. He took her around the basic streets in Konoha, and they talked. He learned quickly that she was a girl not to be messed with, and hated perverts. And oddly hated being in woman's clothing. She learned that he was a super pervert, a Junin that might be taking on a team soon, called a Toad Senin. She had to admit, the Toads were cool, and one of the Sanin. And oddly, they got along quite well despite some bickering between the two stubborn shinobi. She refused to get Konoha quality clothes, despite the different climate, because these were her clan clothes, and high quality to boot, despite being baggy on her for growth and comfort. And Jiraiya's home was actually pretty clean despite her first impression of the guy. It was a traditional style, 2-story, and had an adjoining dojo and above-ground walkway that was covered. A small garden was near the back, with a mini lake, and he had a nice piece of land with thick trees around the fences. A beautiful home, and quickly was comforted by its simple taste and elegance. She explored the home, with Jiraiya rolling his eyes, before she went to explore Konoha itself. It would take some time to truly understand it and get everything down, but it was a start. On the third morning she found her way to the academy slightly late because Jiraiya had forgotten to wake her, on purpose was more her thought, and she entered the building as the bell rang. Running to the class on the 2nd story, she stopped before the door to take a quick breath and calm her nerves. Come on, this is nothing. I've faced death, and I've killed. I was once a proud ninja of Whirlpool, and I am princess of the Land of Fire. I can handle this easily. These kids have no experience, and they are not even ninja. Seriously, feet, move now. Alright, you need to get ready, understandable. Now, seriously, you're pissing me off. While she was going through a mental tirade of cursing her feet, She didn't notice someone behind her until they were about to touch her, but again, her blood fueled and the Kamagan swirled, a kunai in hand and ready to attack whoever was about to disturb her. The kunai was met with another, and the hand still grabbed her, firmly to prevent any more movement, but not too hard to hurt her. She saw a tall man with brown hair and burly build, an eyebrow raised on a generally amiable face. Kushina smiled nervously, cutting off her chakra and turning off the dujutsu, kunai going back into the pouch. She calmed her blood again, and apologized quietly so only the two can hear. I'm sorry. It's a reflex. The teacher nodded quietly. He wasn't going to tell her that he knew of her situation, both her clan name and then of what happened to her home village. Almost everyone in Konoha knew about the attack on Whirlpool. Though only the ninja knew about her being from the Uzumaki clan, and it was well known from Junin to Genin about how she was found, and that was even seeping into the academy students. He had just seen firsthand the greatness of that family, and he had a feeling that wasn't all this Spitfire had to offer. He spoke gently, "It's all right, Uzumaki-san. I'm your new teacher for the next few months, Yumi no Isamu. Just call me Isamu-sensei." She nodded, and he opened the door for her to enter first. But something wasn't right, and her hand grabbed the eraser before it was a foot above her head. She glared at the object, then her eyes shifted to a spiky blonde hair boy with tan skin and manly aristocratic features, but he still had some baby fat. His eyes, however, were what attracted her attention. They were a blue that the sky should be jealous of. Crystal. She quickly averted her eyes as she stood in front of the class, putting the eraser on the desk as Isamu-sensei stood beside her, hand on her shoulder. He glared silently at a certain blonde before he spoke. "Class, we have a new student. Her name is Uzumaki Kushina, of the Uzumaki clan of Whirlpool. She has already been through the academy there, but she will be joining us for the Hokage's reasons. Welcome her, and treat her with respect like you do to each other." Though that isn't much in itself, he thought to himself before beginning the day's lesson. Kushina sat near the window, eyeing the world outside while she listened to Isamu-sensei go on about history of the nations, and foundings, and all that other jazz, which she had been through since she was 4. 8 years of it got tiring really fast. But she would respect him for doing his job, and listen. Because of her absent-mindedness, she didn't pay attention to the class that was staring at her when Isamu-sensei wasn't paying attention. When it was time for taijutsu practice, she followed them out the door, but noticed that they avoided her like the plague. But she didn't let it bother her for now. At the practice field, everyone was paired off, and she was offended that she was facing a girl that was obviously weak. She spoke aloud, her anger evident. "Excuse me, Isamu-sensei, but why are girls and boys separated? Isn't that sexist?" Isamu's eyebrow rose again. This girl sure spoke her mind. "That's the way the system is set up. Why, do you want to fight one of the boys?" Her own eyebrow was raised as if saying, "No duh, why do you think I pointed out this fact?" He mumbled to himself, before reviewing the clipboard of names. If she wanted to fight a boy, then it would have to be one of the weaker ones for the first time. He didn't know her skills, and wouldn't want to overwhelm her. "Alright then, Kushina, you fight with Nara Shikaku. And Shikaku, actually fight. Don't give up within seconds." Shikaku mumbled something that sounded an awful lot like troublesome, before he moved to face her. Isamu started the match. "Begin." Kushina waited a few seconds, to see if he would do anything. But seeing that he didn't, and just stood there in position, she ran forward first, fist cocked ready for a punch, which he blocked, only to realize too late that it was a distraction as she dropped to the floor, and swept his legs out from under him. She had her hands positioned near pressure points and asked, "Bored, do you yield?" Without missing a beat, he nodded, "I yield." They stood up, and Kushina had an annoyed look on her face, and Isamu tried not to sweat. He had barely seen her move, and it was simple and planned that it was beautiful. And this was coming from a chunin. He looked up on the list. Inuzuka Sume was by far the only female he thought had a natural standing chance, and she was a powerhouse. But Kushina looked ready to start trouble, and he might as well give her another boy to fight to sat her fiery temper. Up next, Uchiha Fugaku. The Uchiha scoffed, but did as ordered, and faced her, without even bothering to get in position. Only he and Namikaze were top of the totem pole, and he doubted this know-nothing girl from a no-name village was worth his time, despite her already being a genin. But, maybe Kushina should have warned this village with certain things about Uzumaki. Especially the well-known rule of never pissing off an Uzumaki female. And when the Uchiha refused to take a fighting position, he should have known he was fair game to any humiliation she was about to put on him. Kushina wasted no time after Isamu told them to begin. She knew about the Uchiha eyes, Sharingan. Well, Kamagen was in her opinion much more useful. She called her eyes forth, which surprised the class to see that one of the rumors were true. She did have a dujutsu, and despite it being beautiful to look at, it was scarier than the Sharingan. She spoke up, warning him, if you so much as try to copy any technique I throw at you, Uchiha, I will kill you and every last one of you copycats. And with that, she was in a burst of speed, heading toward him, knowing he could easily see her, and as he was about to land an axe kick at her, she dived under on her back, kicking her leg up and straight into his groin. It was quite satisfying to her to see the proud Uchiha fall in pain, and saw several of the guys in the crowd covering theirs and their faces showed sympathy, while the girls were giggling. She hopped up, prepared for him to come back at her with intent on revenge, which he was. It wasn't long before the match started becoming serious, as he wielded the Sharingan. She made sure to show only basic taijutsu, preserving her clan's privacy, knowing full well he will copy it. After a while he huffed, "What is the name of your eyes? And why aren't you fighting for real? You're holding back," he accused her, eyes narrowed. And he was right. Kushina just blinked at him. "My dujutsu is called the Kamagen. And I'm holding back so you can't copy. My family fighting style is meant for my clan because of our body structures and the taijutsu itself is a bloodline. Anyone that tries to practice them, even with supervision, will kill themselves. I'm not willing to let you kill yourself because you think it is alright to copy without asking for people's permission. And that goes for my other jutsu." Isamu was rather impressed. Kushina knew her stuff very well, and the name of her eyes was terrifying. They were beautiful to look at, but it honestly scared him. And add to the fact that no one knew what they could do, except her. And she would probably tell no one but her future teammates, and the Hokage. The two continued to fight, until Kushina came out on top with a most impressive display of pressure point and vitals attacks, along with hard hits to distract, but the style was completely unpredictable, hard to follow, to overwhelm the enemy with power, and would have been deadly if she added chakra. He had a sneaking suspicion that they usually added chakra. When she meant the style was only meant for her, she meant it, as no one besides family would be flexible, strong, incredibly fast, and have such power to back it. Her clan had been bred to be the best in so many areas. From what was noticed about the fight, her eyes could see about 180 around her, and as if by instinct, she knew where the Uchiha was going to be and moved to counter it. Add to the fact that she seemed to hit the boy in points that reminded him of Tenketsu, but with a variation. Altogether, it was like her eyes were a variation of both Sharingan and Byakugan. For 3 years, she had lived in Konoha. After a week living with Jiraiya, she got her apartment, but she hardly lived in, as she constantly was training. It was a nice apartment, with 1 bedroom, bathroom, a living room, and a kitchen. Simple and sturdy. Just what she needed for now. She of course decorated her room with her family's old mementos and trinkets, and had the furniture from her old home brought to furnish the place, and give her some form of comfort. She didn't bother bringing out things that were worth anything real expensive, except her grandfather's shoji board, grandmother's tea sake set, a weapons rack with a naginata, halberd, katana, wakizashi, and a tanto, some scrolls, and the bonsai Hotaka sensei got her for her 10th birthday, which sat on the large low table in the center. It was homely, and the sense of the familiar objects gave much comfort. So far, besides Jiraiya and the Hokage, she had only shown it to 3 other people, who had become her fast friends. Inuzuka Sume, Hyuga Keiko, and Haruno Miyako. They were strong girls, and liked to fight as much as she did, though Keiko was a quiet and shy girl naturally. But there was a slight problem with her new life. A blonde boy by the name of Namikaze Minato had become the bane of her existence, along with his band of friends. She didn't know why, but she had been picked out as his special target, bickering with her, fighting with her, pranking her, or teasing her. You name it, pretty sure he did it. She didn't know how many jokes he made of her clothes or her tomboyish ways. And he was her equal in taijutsu and ninjutsu, to make it worse. At least in genjutsu, she had a chance to outdo him, though he easily could get out of it after a while. She had no clue as to why he started picking on her, but she didn't let it down her day, especially when she had visits once in a while from her father, sister, and baby brothers. She never let them know how it hurt her that her mother didn't even bother to care, as it made her happy just to see them. Graduation had come and gone, and she was sadly placed on a team with Minato and his neutral to her friend Hyuga Hiyashi, though they at least had Jiraiya as a sensei. He cut the bickering down a little, though the two pranked each other most of the time as it was. Even though they had been a team for 2.5 years, the two just fought like cats and dogs. And she never let him know where she lived. She didn't want to risk the Namikaze destroying her home. The Hyuga on the other hand knew where she lived, but never really came inside. But she could say she had been to both their clan homes many times, if not had to stay at each and Jiraiya's many a times from exhausting herself. But she was 16 now, and by Jiraiya's standards, ready for more adult missions, as he was one of the few who knew her body was fully developed into a young woman's. He trained her when he wasn't training the other two, despite Minato's jokes that she was by far no girl. So it was to her utter embarrassment that they got a mission for spying. The Third Great Ninja War had long started, and Team 7, sometimes called Team Jiraiya, was going to be sending their only female member out as a spy as a geisha at one of the more popular establishments on the border of Suna and Iwa. Oh, how she wanted to wring the man's neck. He knew she hated female clothing. It was always tight, showy, and uncomfortable. She didn't like the idea of being a pervert's ideal girl. And what if something got out of hand, huh? How does she explain killing the guy? 'Cause like hell was she ready to give up her virginity. She was only 15. But she had no choice. It would be a 5-month-long information retrieval. And she loathed every second they made their way there. Of course, it was undercover, and no one knew who she was except that she was a young apprentice searching for temporary work, normal enough. While her 3 teammates kept back and rented a room for the time being, she had to live in an okyo with several geisha and maiko, and for the first 2 weeks, was serving as a maid, until one night, she got lucky, and the owner of the house saw that she had an appealing form and face, and would be allowed as a geisha for a time being at some of the tea houses. As she was getting dolled up, she knew exactly what to do, and how to do it, thanks to her grandmother's training. Oddly, the woman had been right that she'd have to train to be like all women of all stations. So her long red hair was in fancy hairstyle she hadn't done in 2 or so years, and oddly, it comforted but saddened her. But she quickly got over it as she donned her kimono. She had brought her own, not knowing if they'd allow her to use theirs, and face painted as a maiko, and she went to tea house after tea house. She knew that Jiraiya was the one always watching her, as his signature was familiar to her. For a month, this was her life, until one night, she hit the jackpot of all information. A handsome Iwa ninjunin with a little to much sake was her escort that night, and the second she flirted with him, he boasted about him being in charge of an attack on one of Konoha's best resources for steel. It was a risky attack, but if successful, Konoha would be in a lot of trouble. She never knew her charms would be that irresistible, because he told her almost everything under the sun. About his family, his pet dog as a child, how hard he worked to get to his position, the bloodlines and secrets of Iowa, and even about his dream of having a pretty wife one day to have kids with. What shocked her was the look in his eyes as he said this. She blushed, playing it off as being bashful, but he took it too far, taking hold of her and kissing her, his hands in places she wasn't ready to have touched by anyone. She hated it. He smelled and tasted disgusting sweat, alcohol, and some of the pills she gave him that made him talk. And he stole her first kiss without her consent. She would have killed him, but her mind forced her to act like a geisha, not an Uzumaki. She quickly separated the two of them, slapping hard but not enough to send any signals to him, and she spoke coldly, "You go too far, Anata-san. Good night." She then left, wishing the mistress good night, and ran as fast as her legs could go in her geta and kimono. She wanted to cry, oh the pain, her chest wanted to burst. She had lost her first kiss to an Iowa. She normally wasn't girly, but this along with other things were some of the things she held onto, wanting to preserve what little femininity she would allow herself to show. And if she would have chosen a first kiss, it definitely would not have been an Iowa nin that was most likely going to die when she got the information to Jiraiya. No, if anything, it would have gone to that blonde bastard. Wait, Minato. Surely she wasn't thinking of Minato. No matter what she tried to deny, it was Minato she wanted. The Uzumaki blood demanded him, desired and yearned for the blonde prankster that caused her so much trouble. Oh, how she hated her blood for the moment. But she quickly collected herself, and with by far the most impressive display of secrecy, she sent a cage bunshin back to the Okia she stayed at to sleep, while she herself went to the apartment, not trusting anything else to get the information to them. Her blood was pumping, adrenaline racing in her like always, but this time it was different. She had two missions. Kiss the hell out of the Namikaze, she will make damn sure that it is her real first kiss, and then relay the information. And she didn't give a damn if Jiraiya or Hiashi saw this. It wasn't long that she reached the apartment, and to her luck and joy, both Hyuga and Pervert were heading to the bathhouse, and the blonde was just lazing about the rented room, experimenting on some seals on a scroll. He looked up when he felt the door open and close, and saw by far the most beautiful woman in the world, red hair up in a style that permitted some of it to be down along with many combs and trinkets, and her makeup was almost washed away, except the red lips, and the several kimono made her hourglass figure beautiful. But seeing those determined green eyes made him start. Kushina. She didn't say anything as she glided across the room, letting her smooth hand cup his cheek for a second, which shocked him, but not as much as when the other grabbed a fist of his hair at the back of his head, not too hard, and she kissed him softly, tasting like sweets and tea. For the first few seconds, he didn't know what was going on. But he gave in to his instincts, one hand on the small of her back, while the other was at the back of her neck, feeling the soft red hair, and he kissed her back gently, not wanting to scare her. It didn't take long for the soft kiss to become more passionate, and she straddled the blonde bastard, getting more leverage on him as she kissed his neck, biting and sucking softly, eliciting a moan from him as he held her closer. This would have kept going, had she not felt that Jiraiya was on his way back, along with their other teammate. She stopped, leaving a chaste but teasing kiss on his lips, and she moved away from him, waiting as the Toad Sanin and Bukagan user entered. Jiraiya was quite surprised at her being there, which turned to anger when he realized she was endangering the mission. She put her hands up, quickly interrupting his thoughts. It's better in person than leaving you little notes. I had a talkative Junin tonight, and you're going to like what the songbird told me. She explained everything in detail, including what she knew about the guy, and said they could possibly use his person as a disguise if need be. At the least, they knew of some bloodlines that might be used against them, and could make countermeasures. Jiraiya thought it over and agreed that it had been better that she had appeared in person. This was valuable information, but then he noticed something off. When she spoke about the Junin, he saw that Uzumaki fury in her eyes. His own narrowed, concern laced with protective anger that came with having a female student, especially one like Kushina who never really had experience in men. He did something to you, didn't he? She was unusually silent, and that was enough for all of them to get angry. Though she only thought it for two reasons. 1. Minato would think she used him to cleanse herself, which in a way, she did, but even now that the adrenaline was gone, the feelings still remained, and 2. She was claimed as a Konoha nin. And for some odd reason, the men of Konoha did not like the idea of their kunoichi handled by others, especially enemy nin, which made her think it odd when they put kunoichi into these types of situations. Hypocrites, all of them. Then Jiraiya did something none of them expected. He walked across the room, and hugged her fiercely, and whispered, as long as he didn't do anything permanent, it's okay. She knew he meant that more for himself, so that he didn't outright kill the man that thought any harm upon her, but when he said that, she felt the tears coming again, and this time, she didn't stop them. She would be a girl, at least for tonight, and give in to the fatherly embrace that was protecting her from the cruel and harsh world, like she had given into her lust for the blonde. She hugged the burly man tightly, as her body racked as she cried her heart out at the frustrations of this mission and the idea of being touched in a way she did not want. Her muffled cries were echoed in the silent room, and Minato and Hiashi just watched as their teammate cried for the first time in front of them, and they could only feel immense guilt at what she must be suffering for Konoha's survival. As time went by, her tears dried, and she sat in her sensei and fourth favorite man's lap, like she was a little girl again, and she didn't mind as she felt protected by the fact that he was here, and that her teammates were nearby as well. It felt so good to feel safe for once in so long. Not even in Konoha did she feel this safe. She looked at her scar that had been present since she was 11, and would forever be there. What it meant to her. Jiraiya caught her looking at it again, and asked softly, though the other two were listening carefully. You've never explained what that scar was. It wasn't from when I found you, nor was the sword wound in stomach. But this one obviously means something. He left it open for her to talk, giving her a chance to open up. And she took it, letting them in on one of her secrets. When I was 11, right after I became a genin, they forced me onto a Chunin and Junin team because of my royal status as princess of the land's fire and whirlpool. They cheated me because I'm the daimyo's daughter, and they thought if anything ever happened to me, an Uzumaki heir, then my father would put his wrath upon them. My father has long prepared for anything that would ever happen to me or my elder sister, as we are the only children he could allow to become ninja, as my baby brothers are the heirs, while we are only potential. But they didn't understand this, and forced me to be protected. I was so angry at them for taking away my chance to be normal for once, but then my grandfather found me hiding in the clearing that I chose as a hideout that faced our village. And then he told me what I needed to hear. The path is hard and dangerous to take, but as a daughter of the Uzumaki, you should take the path, and ride the course. And then he told me to carry on his nindo. No regrets and no broken promises. To protect our precious people to the bitter end. But, I still don't know why he and Hotaka-sensei sealed me in the treasure room alone. I was left in the dark for 4 days, alone, when they could have sealed me away with some of my cousins and aunts. But, they all died to make sure I was sealed away, and they made me break my promise. I was supposed to help protect them. They didn't even let me die with them. Jiraiya's eyes were shocked, never hearing her account of the story. She had never told anyone, for that fact. And he felt honored that she had finally opened up. For most of the night, she talked on, and they listened to her stories of her old life, from her life in the Fire Palace, to Whirlpool, and then to her last day in her homeland. And her teammates quietly listened, letting her get everything off her chest as she laughed or wiped away a tear or two. She even explained the ongoing bad connection between herself and her mother, though she herself didn't understand why. 2 hours before dawn, she realized that she needed to go back, and she slipped out of Joria's lap, and stretched, a soft smile on her face that had never been there before. She walked to the door, not even looking back, as she whispered, "I'll come back later if I get anything else." Little did she know that a certain blonde was telling Joria of something that wasn't to be said out loud, trying to figure out what was going on. All the while the white-haired man laughed to himself at the Uzumaki. They had finished the mission, and sadly she had no more real reasons to go back to the apartment during that time. So upon reaching Konoha and being debriefed by Sandame, she headed back to her apartment with sagging shoulders. She had wanted so badly to tell Minato how she felt, but then she thought he would make fun of her again. Honestly, the guy didn't have the greatest track record with her, so you'd have to understand her dilemma. But as she was walking to the apartment for the first time in months, she was surprised to see Minato sitting at a nearby bench. Unsure what to do, she stood there, confused and uncertain. He made the choice for her. The second he caught sight of her, he stood. The tall, lean muscular teen was a handsome boy, his baby fat long gone to give way to his more rugged aristocratic features. He motioned her to follow him with his head, and she did, slightly suspicious, but quickly by his side as they walked through the village. It was weird, when they weren't fighting, but she was waiting for another one of his comments that would undoubtedly set her blood on boil. He entered a ramen shop, parting the curtains for the both of him in a gentlemanly manner, and she sat down, and him beside her in seconds. After they ordered, they were quiet, and she was still confused as to what the hell was going on. The order came, and they ate with no word between, which made the owner wonder, but he left well enough alone. And then Minato spoke quietly in his husky voice, sending shivers down her spine. "That night, when that happened, did you mean it, or was it a cleansing?" She was surprised that he was so straightforward, but he always was, so it shouldn't take her so long to answer. She gulped, unsure, but would not let it go unsaid, and she was determined in her answer. "No regrets. I meant it. Every part of it. And I'd do it again every single time. And if you have a problem with it, tough. Because you're going to be dealing with it from now on, Blondie." She saw the blush on his face, along with that wide foxy grin of his. A chuckle came out of his throat. After they finished, he paid for the both of them, and they walked out. The second they did, he took her face in his hands and kissed her softly, and she blinked in reaction. A slight blush came to her face. He smiled, before he kissed her again, chaste this time, and he whispered in her ear huskily. "Then I guess I'm going to be enjoying myself quite thoroughly with you, Whirlwind." He then let her go, walking off in the direction of his family compound, congratulating himself on not only getting a great girlfriend, but a nickname that she isn't offended at, and he could tease her endlessly with it. Little did he know that he created new said girlfriend to faint, yes, faint, from too much blood going to her head. The ramen shop owner, Ikikura Tuki, was laughing his head off. Damn it, not again, please not again. She couldn't live with the thought of her team dying. They had been on a routine patrol mission, and everything was good until the ambush came. Obviously they were outnumbered, 3 Junin on 1 Junin and 3 Chunin. Seriously, uncool guys. But she took up the challenge wholeheartedly. Until she realized her team were outmatched even with their teamwork when they were facing the one she left for them. Just as one of them was about to get a fatal wound, she sped in and took the hit for the young Maida guy. It was only a small wound for her, but it could have killed the kid, if it had hit. She grounded out, taking out the sai, which looked clear of poisons. "Get the hell out of here, and get me back up. I'll cover you, but when I say run, you run like your asses are on fire, got it?" While the Abarum stayed quiet, Guy was worried about his sensei, but nodded furiously. He would not let her down. With that, she used her chakra to create an ice wall, thick enough to stop the three of them for only a moment. Run, and they did as she ordered. The ice was quickly shattered through, and she was faced alone with 3 very angry Iwa Nin. She grinned mischievously, which she got from Minato, and got into position. Which one of you wants to go visit the Shinigami first? Ah, come on, at least one of you needs to speak. It wasn't until 3 hours later that a team found her, awake but in serious trouble. She smiled softly at her longtime friend Soom, who was a part of the tracker team, and trying to staunch wounds to prevent too much blood loss. Well, I must say that was not one of my better fights, nay, Soom-chan. But Soom was crying, frantically doing what she could before the runner got there. She tried to smile for the red head, and sobbed out, "Shut up, whirlwind, or I'll knock your head off." Kushina chuckled a little, before she smiled again, nodding off, tired, and the pain was getting to her. Stupid Minato just had to tell everyone about his little nickname for her. She didn't know how long she had been out of it, but the change of scenery was a lot better, she had to admit. She had woken up in the hospital room, her entire body sore, and she could tell quite a bit of surgery had been done to make sure she lived. The room was packed with flowers, candy, and get well cards. It smelled like her team had been here quite a bit, along with a good helping of her friends. But the overpowering smell of the 3 men of Team Joria was by far more comfort than anything. Sitting before anyone could tell her otherwise, she cursed silently to not attract attention. She sat there for less than 10 minutes before in walked the most handsome man she ever knew, and he was all hers. But as his eyes came to look at her, she realized they were bloodshot, clashing with the crystal blue she loved so much. The second that it registered that she was awake and smiling at him, he was crushing her in his bear hug, and she felt the tears falling on her shoulder as his body shook. Concerned, she wrapped her arms around him, rubbing his back and her fingers through his spikes. What the hell happened while she was out? Did someone die? Please say it wasn't any of their team. Please Cammy, grant her this one. After a while, he calmed down enough to explain what happened while she was out. He had been on a mission as well, and one of his genin, Uchiha Obito, had died saving Rin, and Kakashi was given Obito's finally awakened Sharingan in the left eye, as his was destroyed in a fight. And when he got back, she had been in what was kindly called her deathbed. Not knowing how to tell him everything was alright, she kissed him softly, and hugged him to her chest, telling him in her quiet way that she was alright, and that in the end, everything was going to be alright. Laying there in her arms for a while, he finally mustered up the courage to ask what he had wanted to since they were 16. She was in her own little world, running her soft fingers through his hair, which always made him feel safe and loved by this miraculous woman. Kushina. Her green eyes turned to him, and he felt that jolt of excitement run through him like always. He was unsure how to say this without messing up, but he did what he always did. Straightforward and to the point. I've loved you since we were 16. Will you marry me? Her eyebrow quirked at the Hokage-to-be, and said, smirking, took you long enough, baka. Do you know how long I've been waiting? Minato grinned that foxy grin that she absolutely adored. Long enough. And he leaned in to kiss her like he was a man dying of thirst that had found the most delicious water in the world to drink. XXXXXXXX. Honestly, what was keeping him? This was their wedding he was about to miss, and so help him, he had better have a damn good excuse. Several of their male friends that were present could feel her murderous intent were sweating bullets, while the others were frantically asking each other if they had reminded the blonde if today was the big day. They all said yes, and had even left post-it notes everywhere, including his forehead, and even on his instant ramen. So where the hell was the walking dead man? 5 minutes before he was late, the blonde walked in, pristine and in the traditional wedding attire, as she was in the kimono. He had a big grin on his face, like he had a secret that she wouldn't find out until later. It both tickled her curiosity and aggravated her at the same time. He was always good at that. All those present were their friends through the years, her father and siblings, his mother and sisters, who came out of hiding for this event, though would immediately return to their hidden home away from Konoha. Even her mother showed up, though like always since she was 12, said not a word to her daughter. Her Genin Chunin team and his, or what was left. and then Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Hiashi. Sandaime had the honor of wedding the two lovebirds. He even got to call her by her title, Kushina Haim, several times, in which she glared daggers at the old man throughout half the ceremony. And Minato got some hits about taking so damn long. Ah, this was a good day to be Hokage. He could pick fun at the two, and neither could do anything about it. After the wedding and the reception, small and quiet, Kushina was whisked away by her blonde husband to her new home, the Namikaze compound, and that night was by far better than any before it. Every time she thought about it, she giggled to herself, and smiled softly. Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina. Long, but it was nice. And he didn't care when she had told him that she would not give up her last name. In fact, he just smiled and said, I would never have you give up yourself. I fell in love with you, remember? He lay beside her, fiddling with his wife's red tresses, as she smiled softly. Then he remembered what he got for her. Getting out of bed, he grabbed the little box, and then got back into the futon with her, smiling like the fox he was all the while. He gave her the box, and she took it, curious, and opened it while he watched her expectantly. And her smile said it all. It was a stylized swirl, as both his clan and hers had the same design, but different colors. Hers was red and black, like on the back of the Junin and Chunin flak jackets, as it was the style a long time ago to celebrate the daimyo Daiki's new wife by putting her family's symbol in Konoha's fashion. His clan was blue with gold lining, in exactly the same position. So, for his new bride, he gave her the red swirl, with the gold lining. On the back was an inscription that meant the world to her, as she wore the scars on her body to prove it. My senpuu. No regrets and broken promises. To protect our loved ones to the bitter end. Uzumaki clan Nindo, to celebrate the union of Namikaze and Uzumaki. She put it on, feeling the weight comfortably fit around her neck. And then she proceeded to make her husband a very happy man. Why? Damn it. Why? The day her son decides to come to the new world, Kyuubi just had to attack. No, he couldn't wait, could he? Had to drag out her husband, the fourth Hokage, while she is lying in pain because they won't give her the drugs. So help her, if they would let her out of this damn place, she'd take down the beast in seconds. No problem for a pregnant Uzumaki. She guaranteed it. Pain ripped through her body once again, and she did her best to cover it, but damn it, it hurt so bad. Her blood was boiling to kill anything in range, but she had no target available. She was going to make her son pay with all the extra training she was going to give him. He would feel the wrath of 19 hours of labor. The doctor kept telling her to push, and she just wanted to tell them to shut up, but they were there for her son, her Naruto. Sum and Miyako were with her, holding her hands and kissing her head as she pushed, and she wanted so badly to just cry at this never-ending pain. And finally, he came into the world, crying and screaming with the heartiest lungs she ever heard. Her son all right. She let some tears fall as she waited to hold her son, and when he was tucked into her arms, she felt like she accomplished the greatest thing in her life. It didn't matter that she was an S-rank Anbu, or wife of Namikaze Minato, the greatest and most favorite man in existence. It didn't matter that she was the last to know her clan secrets, and would one day share them with the child, her child. Or that she was the daimyo's daughter, and princess to the land of fire and whirlpool. It didn't matter at all the accomplishments she had made. This boy, this handsome boy that looked exactly his father, from spikes to ticklish toes, was the greatest accomplishment of her life. And he had the crystal blue eyes that made the sky jealous, and that she loved. He was a prince to her in the land of fire, and for a baby, had large chakra coils. Sum and Miyako stayed with her as she fed her son, and while Kushina rested. The Hokage's wife and son needed some sort of protection, and if anything, they would help the two evacuate since Kushina was so weak. The many hours had taken their toll on her, but the smile on her face was so big that they didn't say anything. But the happiness ended when Minato came through the door, battle-hardened, and the stench of death on him. One look at the scene before him, and his face crumbled into a mix of sadness, pride, and happiness. Confusing, but not to be worried about. He went to his wife's side, holding her tightly while careful of his son's small body. He kissed her on the forehead, and said the words that terrified her to no end, "I have to do it, Kushina. There is no other way." While the other two didn't know what he meant, Kushina's face paled even more, a sense of deep sadness swept through her. But Minato had no other way, and to save the village they loved, it was a sacrifice needed to be made. And not even Sandaime could take his place. She was torn at the idea of losing her husband, the man she would love to the bitter end, but this was for their son, so he could live like all the other children. She kept her face straight, so he wouldn't see her tears in the last hour of his life, and she smiled for him one last time, before taking 2 scrolls and putting it in his hand. "Put this with all my scrolls. And make sure Sandaime gets the letter about Naruto getting the scroll when he is 7. It has to be 7, or any later will cause problems. And this scroll goes to my sister immediately." She placed a scroll in his hand, as he searched her eyes for an answer. She smiled softly, trying to not sob. "I will pass not long after you, Minato. My body isn't able to handle that much longer. I will stay for Naruto as long as I can. But I will see you in a short while. I have no regrets, because out of everything, our son, our Naruto, is my greatest and proudest accomplishment. I know that he is made for great things. He is after all, a Namikaze Uzumaki. He was born to be a legend. And soon, you will do your greatest accomplishment, and save this village. These were things we were meant to do, Minato. Our time has come." The Inuzuka and Haruno were surprised by the face of their greatest Hokage thus far. It was so broken, so lost, and there was nothing anyone could do. Tears fell down his face, even though he tried to smile for his wife, the love of his life. Steeling himself, he kissed her one last time passionately, before letting go, kissing her forehead softly, and then took his son and the scrolls in his arms, and stood up, gazing at this amazing woman one last time. As he turned to leave, he stopped at the doorway, and that foxy grin was on his face for the last time for her. "I love you, Whirlwind. I always will." And then he left, taking her son, her pride, with him. The tears fell from her eyes, and Tsume and Miyako were at her side within seconds, not bothering to ask what was going on. From what they could understand, something big was going to happen, that involved Naruto, and the death of their friends, 2 powerful, humble, and wonderful friends. Kushina grabbed a couple scrolls that she had hidden away, and gave them several each, with their own names on some and names of others as well. She took off her necklace, fiddling with it while she explained herself. "I love the old man, but I don't trust Sandaime. After this happens, Sandaime will hide my son away from my family, and for that, I will not bother, because here, he may be safer. But, what Minato is about to do is risky. Both of us wish that this village would do his last requests, but we both know that they won't. And I'm afraid the old man will make the situation worse. So these are my last requests, for when Naruto is older and when I can't be here for him like I wish." She sobbed quietly, before continuing, "All I ask is that you do not hate Naruto. This burden he will soon bear, it is to protect this village. The last resort. I know it is a lot to ask, but I beg you, help my son grow to be strong. Do not hate him like everyone else will." Both of the women were confused, but nodded, swearing not to hate the beloved and awaited child of the soon-to-be dead couple. With one last look at her necklace, she gave it to Tsume. "Give this and the 2 scrolls to Hiyashi, and tell him to give this to his godson when the boy turns 6. And then give this to Jiraiya, along with his scroll, and tell him to come by when Naruto is 12, if not earlier." Quote. She pulled out a small package, and handed it to Miyako. Tsume had a wavering smile, as she tried to joke, "So, you finally pulled your biggest tricks out of the bag. Got anything else to magically pull out of nowhere?" Kushina laughed despite her tears, thankful to pass on with friends beside her. She was so used to thinking that a true Uzumaki death was in battle, among comrades. But her death was noble as well, because she had given the world her greatest gift, in the form of a handsome blonde boy named Naruto. She hoped with all her heart that he would raise hell. After all, this is her and Minato's son the world was being blessed with. Minato, I wish you would reconsider. I don't understand why you are doing this. Hiyashi pleaded to his dearest and closest friend, whom he often thought of as a brother. The blond man continued on his task, painting seals on the belly of his sleeping newborn son. It's for the best, Hiyashi. His deep voice was dulled out, a far cry to his usually cheerful though sometimes annoying voice. Hiyashi glared at the room around them, a secured ceiling area in a cave near the attacking demon that was dark and surrounded in candles in specific positions, seals on the floor that Hiyashi had helped put there. The Hyuga head answered viciously, I don't want to hear that. He doesn't deserve what you ask of us. Normally, Hyuga decorum forbids such outbursts, though Hiyashi had long since broke away from the Hyuga train of thought, he still prided himself in holding his more negative emotions in check. But this was breaking him. Then a pair of blue eyes looked up from his work, dead compared to its always bright blue. The look held all that Minato was feeling at that moment, loss, anguish, pain. Hiyashi had asked him when he came back with the babe what was wrong, as Minato rarely cried. And when he learned why, it was driving Hiyashi even further to curse Kami-sama and all his ancestors for the fate he had placed on his two best friends. It was horrible enough that Minato was to leave this world to defend the village he swore to protect, but Kushina was passing on with him, leaving their son without parents. And now Minato asking him and the others to leave his son to the clutches of Konoha for a set time period. This infuriated the Hyuga. The two lovebirds weren't the only ones awaiting the birth of the two's child. All of their friends had also waited for the beloved child, even to the point of planning all the things they would help teach the child along with their own. And all the embarrassing stories they would tell the child. Only to have this ripped from them, because Minato wanted to protect the child from his father's enemies. Those blue eyes were still staring at Hiyashi, who only glared back, wishing against all hope that his friend's stubbornness wouldn't make this more difficult. But instead of the stubbornness, Minato was begging with his eyes. Hiyashi, even you know that it would be suspicious if the ninja clans of Konoha randomly chose a orphan to protect and train. How would you get away with explaining that? For my son's protection, I can't be associated with him publicly until he can protect himself or the Namikaze clan returns to Konoha. Please Hiyashi, I'm not ordering you as a Hokage, but I am asking you as my best friend, please do this for me. Hiyashi was torn, between doing as Minato asked, tears brimming those dying eyes, and the fact that he was leaving his godson to be a target of this village. The guilt was rising in him, knowing that Minato's reasoning was right, no matter how much the Hyuga wanted to protest. But the thought of leaving the blonde infant to this cruel world sent him to unashamed tears that fell from his normally impassive pale lavender eyes. His voice was harsher, constricting as his throat was closing on itself. I will do as you ask, Hokage Minato-sama. For a brief moment, the Namikaze's blue eyes lightened up, with a range of emotions that Hiyashi could not begin to describe. Putting his son down in the cushioned cradle, he kissed the sleeping babe on the forehead. I'm sorry, Naruto, but there is no other way. I hope you can forgive me one day. I love you, and I am proud of you, my senpu Oji. Hiyashi still had tears running down his cheeks when Minato turned to face his best friend a last time. Hiyashi wanted to throttle him, seeing that foxy grin that had always been Minato's trademark, even though this situation was so serious. Nay, Hiyashi, I'll see you in 50 years or so, you old stickler. Be good, and don't forget to live. And with that, the fourth Hokage left the cave, without looking back at the son and godfather. When Hiyashi knew he was gone, riding away at the top of Gamabunta's head, he stood by to watch the child, letting his tears flow at the knowledge of the inevitable death of the greatest Kage to date, the passing of an incredible fiery woman he had come to think of as a very dear sister, and the idea of banishing the prince of Konoha for the first few years of his life from his presence. It wasn't long for Hiyashi to see the seals being put to work, glowing brightly in blue and white, then a surge of red that centered towards the babe, who now awakened, crying at the pain that he was receiving, wishing for the comforting presence of someone. Hiyashi had to remind himself not to run to the child, and waited for the process to complete. When the seals died down, and the surge of Kyuubi's spirit and chakra entering his prison inside the boy, Hiyashi ran forward, tenderly picking up the fearful infant, and quickly began to soothe him. The crying subsided within a minute, and Hiyashi looked down to closely inspect his godson. The seals were still showing on his bloated belly, and the Hyuga noticed that 3 small black whiskers that adorned each of the boy's cheeks, and would forever mark him as the container of Kyuubi. He then noticed the blue eyes that his best friend had, a blue that made the sky envious. Naruto was looking up at this strange man, with no knowledge of what is about to him. Yawning, the barely 4 hours old babe returned to his much-needed sleep, and Hiyashi sighed, holding the child close to him for one last time before being torn from him for quite some time. Placing the babe back on the cushion, Hiyashi looked back at him, a sad smile on his face. Sleep well, Senpu Oji. He then walked out the cave entrance, ready to report of finding a suspicious scene in a cave near the dead Hokage and the once rampaging Kyuubi. 2 days since the attack. 2 long days of disorder and mayhem, in which he was forced to take office again at the untimely death of his predecessor. 2 very long days of the most grueling and ancient tortures known to man were inflicted upon the old man, and he cursed Minato for making him take back this position he gladly gave up. What were these tortures forced upon the old Hokage, you ask? Of course it is the murderous meetings with the vicious bloodthirsty village council. Well, it was the civilians trying to get the power. The shinobi were still trying to see who was left in the ranks, seeking to grab power with the loss of their 4th Hokage, and the Sandaime had to rein in these fire-breathing demons to make sure they got nothing, searching the law books and history of Konoha he knew so well to make it impossible for them to get anything. And then there was the most heinous of terrors that sent a shiver down any cage's back. It came straight from the 9th circle of hell, and it stayed with them until death or relinquish of office. Yes, it is none other than the dooming paperwork. He sighed, facing away from the mountains of paper that littered his office once again, as he gazed out the window to see his destroyed but recuperating village. Despite what many would think, he had not been glad to don the robes and hat of office again, but he knew that Minato had been right. There was no other way. The sky was the blue shade closest to the now past Namikaze's eyes, and now it was made jealous by his son's eyes. Speaking of the boy, he wished so badly that he could hide him away from the world, protecting the heir of Namikaze Uzumaki from the cruel world, but he couldn't. If he was anything like his parents, he would always be the center of attention, and of course demand much socializing with others. But he couldn't very well put him into an orphanage when he had those markings on him. At least not yet. And he knew that the council would absolutely try to make sure he had as little contact with the child as possible, that much he was certain of. He needed to stay on the council's good side for now, even if they held no official authority, not only to protect his unsteady position, but to be able to protect the sun-kissed child as he grew up. He did not know what to do with the child. The Anbu watching the boy were on full alert, fully informed of who the child was, from pedigree to the 5-story chakra powerhouse demon inside his stomach. And he trusted them to care for the boy with every ounce in his body. The heir of the 4th Hokage and his stunning and breathtakingly deadly wife was a child bred for greatness, and they had their loyalties to both their Yondaime, and to Kushina, their comrade. Rubbing the bridge of his nose, he collected himself before going to yet another meeting, this time bringing news of the child to them. He had every viable speech ready, every loophole checked, and ready to answer any question they had. It would be the most prepared battle in his life. The walk to the council room was long and dark in his mind, but as he came close to the door, he saw that 4 Anbu were standing nearby, one of the men, Panda, holding the sleeping babe gently while rocking him silently, the blonde slowly falling asleep, his lungs gasping for a little air when he shifted, before it continued in a smooth pattern. The Hokage smiled gently, running a hand through the already formed small blonde spikes, and they were soft and silky despite their appearance. With a nod to the 4 Anbu, he headed into the room first, knowing other Anbu were well hidden for means of protection. The round table had already been filled with the shinobi clan heads, except the chairs of the Namikaze, Mitarashi, and Hatake, and prominent civilians that made up the village council, and Danzo the ex-Anbu commander, and they all turned to him, nodding their heads to show at least some form of respect. He made his way to his chair, and sat without any prompt with the 4 Anbu behind him, though the one with Naruto in his arms was more hidden than the other 3. Sarutobi spoke gravely. Not many of you know what really happened the night Kyuubi attacked. So I will give you the bare details. Minato-kun had no other choice than to seal the Kyuubi into a human child, making the boy a Jinchuriki. As his dying request, Yondaime asks that everyone of Konoha sees the child as a hero, because he was sacrificed to be the bearer and prison of the Kyuubi, protecting us with his very life. With that, the panda-masked Anbu stepped forward, showing the room the blonde whiskered marked child. Gasps were heard around the room, and then mutters. And then the oppositions came. It came first, naturally, from one of the civilians. Kill it now, before the demon gets out. Many of the other villagers agreed to this point, though several stayed silent, looking at the child with scrutinizing eyes, not so easily swayed by emotions unlike counterparts. The ninja in the room, however, stayed quiet. Many already knew who the child was. The looks were a dead giveaway. And the fact that all of them, minus the Uchiha and the missing clan heads, got a scroll the day after the attack with a "read now or suffer the wrath" on the faces of Haruno Miyako and Inuzuka Sume, was a big clue. Though they weren't telling anyone about it. One of the villagers, a haggard elderly woman, turned to the silent ninja, and asked in a voice that oddly quieted and gained everyone's attention. What do you think? You are after all the experts on these things. We know nothing of these skills, or what it takes to keep the demon secure in the boy's body. This actually shocked the shinobi that a civilian would come to them for an opinion in something they knew more about, instead of making their rash judgments again. But what was even more surprising was when Hyuga Hiyashi answered first, in a tone that was not condescending, but matter-of-fact. The boy is human, not a demon, and the seal will hold. The Yondaime would never have placed a faulty seal on a child. And as a shinobi, and a long-time friend and teammate to Minato, I know that his seal mastery was the best. It rivaled if not surpassed our sensei, Jiraiya the Toad Sannin. This boy is the only reason we live at this very moment, and we should honor the Yondaime's last wish, and celebrate the rising of our hero. Sume's eye ticked, knowing full well that he almost let it out that Naruto was Minato's son despite that Minato swore them all to silence for now. The Hyuga saw this action, and from his slight body language, she knew he was squirming on the inside at nearly ruining all the plans laid out by the clans of shinobi close to the boy's parents. No one but they could know of the boy's royal and powerful heritage and dormant bloodlines for now. If the villagers found out, they would gossip, and it would reach the wrong ears, and there was a high risk of the boy being hunted down, and the start of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. They weren't prepared as of yet, especially with the visit from the damned demon fox, but when the time came, they would inform the world of the boy's existence, and they would be ready to protect him and Konoha. They just needed time, and to keep this away from Sandaime for a little before everything was planned out so the professor had no chance to pull apart their strategies. After many more discussions, it was decided that the village was to be informed of the boy's burden and the Yondaime's last wish. Oh, how this would later come to infuriate the shinobi, as they learned almost too late that this village was filled with idiot civilians. The funeral for the Yondaime and all shinobi who died that night was a week after the attack. There was no sight of Tsunade, as expected, but no one was able to find Jiraiya either. Obviously, to mourn the loss of a great man, the daimyo Daiki came with his entire family, and grieved with the people of Konoha. Very few knew the reason why they were weeping with them. But those who did could only stand beside them, unable to speak a word of whom they were all really spreading tears for. The daimyo had lost a son-in-law and a daughter, and there was no word on his grandchild, and by the looks of it, he had already lost hope. And they couldn't tell him the truth to his face, in front of the crowd. Tease.